So it's been nearly a month. About a month since we first spoke. And in that conversation, there was I left you with some self-inquiry to do.
Yeah.
Around what your priorities were and what made you come alive and energize you, and maybe some of the other stuff that drained you of energy a bit. And I just would love you to sort of recap of how you got on with that and what was the impact.
So what I did was I put some like lo-fi music on, actually booked out an hour where I knew I had nothing else to do. And I tried journaling, but with a view to trying to cover some of the stuff that I do. And I think what you'd asked me to do is try to notice whether or not I felt any changes in, physically around the things that I was writing about. I mean, I really enjoyed the experience of doing it, actually. Like I say, it's the sort of thing where it felt a bit like how meditation feels, and a little bit like when I'm exercising. It's the stuff that I don't make anywhere near enough time for, but it's the stuff that makes me feel good. It gives my brain like a bit of a break. It's like it's a constructive way to let my brain have a bit of time off, I think.
A couple of things that come to mind. One, it's interesting that you talked about anxiety, because there was a concern in our first conversation that doing something like this, where you write down everything that you're doing, and could be overwhelming in itself.
Yes.
But actually, that wasn't the case. So that's interesting observation.
Yeah.
And possibly something to bear in mind next time you may feel anxiety is you've now got a tool to maybe offload some of that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Whether it's journaling or just any way of offloading out, and the second point is getting it out.
Yeah.
We all get caught up, don't we, in that vicious circle of thoughts. And one of the things about writing things down is it's creative. If in reflecting on that self-inquiry, you came to the first conversation, the first session with this. You had all of these things that you wanted to do, and you felt like you couldn't, if you said no to any of them, that it'd be like letting people down. And I'm just curious as to where do you want to take the rest of this session in? Is that something you still want to work on in terms of where you focus your priorities?
Yeah.
Or is it something more prominent that's come up in the last few weeks?
I must admit, I think after this last week, after this last session, I did imagine that what I needed to do was kind of try to decide what I was going to stop doing, or what I was going to drop, or how I was going to, manage my priorities better. But I think actually my priorities have become a little bit clearer in that it needs to be my own well-being and the things that make me feel good in order to be good here. And then everything else, rather than deciding to drop it, just hopefully I will naturally do less of it. Or I even though I'm busy and I'm stressed, I do tend to get things done. So perhaps if I can do those other things and get my mindset right, perhaps those other things will naturally feel less stressful. That's my hope, and I think it's worth giving it some time to see if I can turn it around a little bit. So I guess really then for me, that is probably my next goal. That's probably the next thing that I want to try and work on, is how to best make the time for exercise try to read. I love to read, and I just literally, by the time I get into bed, I read a page, and I end up reading the same page about 8 times, and that takes me months to get through books. So again, those trying to work out how to fit those things into my schedule and when I'm going to do that. So I started running, and I've started doing it. I've started getting up at 5:30 in the morning and running at 6. And so I've managed to do that twice a week for the last couple of weeks. Yeah, and so that's, again, it's like I've time traveled. It's like I've gained an hour that I've never had before, and that the rest of my family don't have. They're all still fast asleep, and I'm out and I'm doing it, and then I'm coming home and I'm getting showered. And if I can do it all quickly enough, then I'm showered before even Luna wakes up, so I can still be there to do breakfast and all that sort of stuff. So I guess there's some scope around messing with that a little bit more. I think perhaps.
Let's try this on for size.
Okay.
See how this lands. I've spoken to you. It's maybe the 3rd or 4th time I've spoken to you, and I have a warmth to you. I see someone who's complete. I see a loving father. I see a loving partner. I see a loving friend. I see someone that believes in, deep down, believes in themselves, that they are, and you are a wonderful, loving human being.
Thank you, mate. That's very kind of you to say. And yeah, I mean, that's what I want. I want that, and I want to believe that. And I'm not daft enough to think that's if I can't feel like that, despite all of the work that I try to do to prove that I am that, right? Then it's not about the things that I do. You know, I think that whatever is going on with me has probably been going on with me most of my life. It probably is part of the reason why I'm so, desperate to parent Luna properly, and to make sure that her existence and her self-actualization is genuine. It's because she believes in herself, not because she feels she has to prove to the world that she's enough. Do you see what I mean? And I think those two things, that's shame, that's underlying imposter syndrome. It's who I've been forever, and I'm only probably just realizing it in the last few years that what I was doing and what I've been doing is people pleasing to prove that I'm enough, rather than doing what I want to do and being who I want to be, and then people validating me for who I actually am. Do you see what I mean? So I've had a bit of an identity crisis, and that has led me down a weird, dark, but ultimately, I guess, life-affirming path, which is, at least now I see all of these things for what they actually are. I realize that the reason that I think I'm letting people down all the time isn't because of anybody else. It's because of something going on in me, and it's not real, you know. And so I can see it. You know, I can see it. I'm at that pivotal step now where I something has to change in order for me to actually start believing it myself, and whether or not I actually can, at the very least, not pass it on.
I would like to challenge that.
Okay.
Because that's part of you saying that. There's part of you saying what you just said, but there's another part of you that is already working, showing up as that person that is loving, self-loving. You're on this call. You're doing wonderful stuff for Menfulness. You're a trained coach yourself.
Yeah, you know, I feel like I could always do that little bit more. I could always be that little bit better. And so, yeah, no, I think I really, really appreciate what you've said. You know, it really is kind of It's just,
I would also add, Sam, that if you only did one thing on your list, that people would still love you in the same light as if you did everything on your list.
yeah, I wouldn't. And that's the reality, isn't it? Is that that's what I mean. I've realized that it's not about anybody else now. It's up to me now. And so yeah, and I think that's why these little things like that little simple journaling tool didn't take me a long time. I had to do some work to get some time to myself. But once I was in it, I wasn't thinking about my list at all. I wasn't thinking about where else I should be. So I think that's what I want more of, stuff like that.
So you said you're going back to the day job.
God, yeah.
In the beginning of November.
Yeah.
So that's going to shift things again.
Yeah.
So my challenge for you would be to look at your calendar, to look at your average day, and you've already mentioned that you're creating time in the morning for yourself through exercise a couple of times a week.
Yeah.
I would challenge you to create a block of time that is set. You don't change it. You don't say, "Oh yeah, I'll drop half an hour off that hour. That's for me, just to fit in another meeting with someone." Or
yeah,
and it might, you might want to label it, as your time with your executive board, which might be, spending time for you.
Yeah.
And dealing with nothing. Just giving yourself an hour, giving yourself an hour and a half.
Yeah.
But book it in every single week.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and I mean, what I could do, as soon as I'm running a couple of times a week, if I'm really disciplined, then the other couple of days a week that I don't run, in between those 2 run days, I could get up, I could get myself set up, wake up, and just come in here or go in the back room and do it then, because then again, the world is still asleep. It's still, it's possibly most likely that I'll be able to find that time. It's just making sure that I get up and do it. So yeah, I like that. 60 to 90 minutes of executive board team meeting with team me.
Yeah, exactly.
There is a me in team. Yeah, I like that.
And the beauty of it is there's no pressure to do anything. There's no to-do lists. There's no. It's just you've given yourself an hour and a half just to be present, focus on whatever it is you want to focus on.